Hello friends, welcome to BrainCandy Labs. I'm Ava Astro. This is our very first virtual kids conference. The session today is from Engineer to Science TV host, How I Became the Space Gal, with our special guest, Emily Calandrelli. First, some housekeeping. I invite you to turn on your cameras if you wish. To get up close and personal with our speaker, you can switch on your view from gallery view to speaker view at the top of your screen. All lines are muted so we don't get too much background noise. As our speaker shares with you, you'll probably have questions. Put them in the chat and she'll get to them in a later section. Now, a few things about our speaker, Emily Calandrelli. Emily Calandrelli is an executive producer and Emmy-nominated host for Fox's Exploration Outer Space, a correspondent on Netflix show Bill Nye Saves the World. And most recently, Emily is set to star in Netflix recently announced preschool series Emily's Wonderlab. This series takes kids through lively experiments and entertaining activities to demonstrate what makes them fun. Emily will serve as the host and executive producer along with Bunham Murray Productions. Emily's Wonderlab is set to hit Netflix in 2020. Emily, on to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you all here today. Thanks for having me. So as Ava mentioned, my name is Emily Calandrelli. On the internet, I am known as the Space Gal. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I became the Space Gal and what I do for a job today. So back when I was in college, I studied aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering. So basically I studied a lot about how things flew in the air and how they flew in space and how to build those things. And then I went to MIT for graduate school and I studied more aerospace engineering. So I studied space stuff for a really long time, almost as long as a decade. And that's how I became really excited about space stuff. And today I am the host of a TV show on Saturday mornings called Exploration Outer Space. And this is a show that's all about space. I don't know if anyone here has ever seen it, but as the host, I get to travel all around the country and go to different NASA centers or schools like the ones that you go to, or universities or other companies. And I get to talk about things like rockets and spaceships and rovers on Mars and searching for aliens and everything in between. It is such a fun job, and I think you'd really like it if you like things like space. And I also got to be on a show called Bill Nye Saves the World. Does anyone here know who Bill Nye is? Can you raise your hand if you've heard of Bill Nye? I think so, some of you, yeah. So Bill Nye was a big, famous science person when I was a kid. I would watch him in my classrooms growing up. And today he's my boss. I get to work for him. And so we have a show on Netflix called Bill Nye Saves the World. And for that show, I get to travel all around the world, not just the country, but all around the world to get science stories for Bill to show on that show, which is really fun. And my other job is I am an author. So I have a series of books called the Ada Lace Adventures. Here's what the first one looks like. And Ada is a third grader who loves science and technology, and she goes on adventures to solve mysteries with robots and gadgets that she builds herself. So she's pretty cool, in my opinion. And we have a lot of books there's 5 in the series, and they're all very colorful. That's one of my favorite parts, is they're all very, very beautiful. But one of the books is my favorite, and I'll tell you why. This is the 3rd book in the series, Ada Lace, Take Me to Your Leader. And the reason this one is my favorite is because I sent this one into space. This one has actually been to the International Space Station. It was through a program called Story Time from Space, where they send children's books up to the space station and they're read by astronauts. So if you go to storytimefromspace.com, you'll find an astronaut reading my book, Floating Weightless, in the space station with my book and reading it aloud, and you can see the entire Earth in the background. And it looks so, so, so cool. So that's the reason why this one is my favorite book. But the reason that I wanted to study all of this stuff was because I wanted to fly on something called the Vomit Comet. Have you guys heard of the Vomit Comet? Anyone heard of the Vomit Comet? Okay, I'm gonna tell you. It is the coolest thing you will ever learn about, and it's the reason that I wanted to study aerospace engineering. So the Vomit Comet, well, let me tell you how I learned about it. So when I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I wasn't really sure what I was interested in. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just was so confused. And I remember walking down the hallways of my university, just like you walk down the hallways in your schools, and I saw a poster on the wall. And on that wall, in the poster, there was a student floating weightless like an astronaut, and it said, "Do your homework weightless." I was like, what could that possibly mean? And it turns out that you could take a class where you could do your homework weightless if you studied aerospace engineering. And so I wanted to do my homework weightless. I wanted to fly like an astronaut. I wanted to be that student in the poster. And so to do that, I had to study aerospace engineering. And so I did. And I got to fly on something called the Vomit Comet. Now, the Vomit Comet is like a 8,000-foot roller coaster in the sky. Like, it's wild. It's an airplane that flies like this. We call this parabolic motion. And it flies like this. It flies like a roller coaster. And the distance from the top to the bottom is 8,000 feet. Imagine riding a roller coaster that was 8,000 feet tall. That's what this is like. It's wild. So it does that because if you've ever been on a roller coaster, or if you've ever been in a car that's gone over a hump really fast, and maybe your butt lifts off your seat and you get a little bit of air time, and you kind of have like these like butterflies in your stomach when it happens, right? Some of you have experienced this. It's like that, but longer. So it goes over the hump, and once it starts diving down, you're free falling in the plane, and you feel weightless for about 25 seconds. So you feel weightless. But then of course the roller coaster, the airplane has to go back up. And what happens when you go back up in the roller coaster and it goes, you sort of feel like you're being pushed back. But what if that roller, and so what if you were going, I'm not muted anymore. Okay, if you go back up really, really fast, you'd be pushed back in your seat really, really hard, right? So you'd feel really heavy. So you feel weightless and heavy and weightless and heavy and weightless and heavy and weightless and heavy and weightless and heavy for an hour and a half, which is why they call it the Vomit Comet, right? Because if you had to ride a roller coaster that intense for that long, you might get sick, which brings up a good point. When you are on the Vomit Comet, you have to wear a flight suit. And in that flight suit, you have a pocket right here. And in that pocket, you bring the most important tool that you will bring on that plane. Can you guess what that tool is?
Okay.
Can you guess? It's a barf bag. A barf bag is the most important thing that you will bring on that plane, because what happens if you barf in microgravity? If you barf when you're weightless, where does that throw up go? Everywhere, right? And that's not only is that gross, but that's a huge problem, because people aren't just flying on the Vomit Comet for fun. No, they're flying on the Vomit Comet to do their homework, to do research. And so there's research science experiments everywhere, all over the plane, electronics all over the plane. And you don't want any liquids or small solids, or especially throw up, to get into any of your electronics. So you want to be very careful about, if you're going to be sick, where you're going to put that throw up, right? So That is a very important thing on the plane. But not only is it important to understand how vomit works in weightlessness, people use this plane as a laboratory to study all kinds of things. How water works, how do you cook food in weightlessness? How do you exercise in weightlessness? Because if you're running in weightlessness, the way you run is you kind of hop like this. Well, if you're weightless and you hop, you're just going to keep going up to the ceiling and hit your head on the ceiling, right? Because there's no gravity to pull you back down. So how do you run when you're weightless? There are people that are trying to figure out all of these questions, answers to all of these questions. Another really important question is, how does fire work in weightlessness? Because here on Earth, when you light a candle or when you light a lighter and you see a flame, show me with your hands, because I can see some of you. What does a flame look like here on Earth? When you see a candle, what does it look like? What shape does it make? What does it look like? Yeah, I see. Yes, exactly. It looks like this. It's like a teardrop shape. Exactly. And it only makes a teardrop when you have gravity, because hot air, which is less dense, lighter than regular air, will rise when you have gravity. And when you have hot air moving, when you have hot air rising, it forces that flame upward to look like a flame, or to look like a teardrop, right? So you only have a teardrop shape of a flame when you have gravity. So here's another question. What do you think a flame looks like in weightlessness when you don't have gravity? Can you show me with your fingers, like, what do you think a flame would look like? Yeah. I see a lot of people doing a circular motion. It looks like a spear. You have a ball of fire, because now hot air, which is less dense than regular air, doesn't rise when you have weightlessness. So you don't have that convection. You don't have that movement of air to force that air upward to look like a flame. So now it goes out in all different directions and it looks like a ball of fire, which is so cool. So there are NASA scientists studying how to fight fires in space, but the first thing you have to do is know what fire is going to look like. Where is it going to go? What's it going to look like? How's this going to work? So that's another really cool thing that they're using the Vomit Comet for, is to study flames in space. So that's the reason that I got into aerospace engineering, and that's how I sort of became the space gal today, and I've had so many adventures since. Through my TV show, if you haven't checked it out, you really have to watch it. It's called Exploration Outer Space. I've been able to do so many fun things. I've flown on the Vomit Comet 3 times now, which is really, really fun. I went to Russia to train like an astronaut, to train like a cosmonaut, and I rode in something called a human centrifuge. Now, a human centrifuge is kind of like a really fun amusement park ride. And it looks like this, and the human sits in here, like the human sits in my fist, and it moves like this, really, 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 really fast. And it does that because the humans that are sitting in here feel these extreme G forces, gravitational forces, like, right, what we talked about being pushed down. That's what you feel like when you're in this contraption. And they do that so that the humans can experience what it's like to launch into space. Because when you're going up really, really fast, you're going to be pulled down because your body's going to want to stay where it was, and you feel really, really, really heavy. And astronauts and cosmonauts, the people that go to space, need to understand what that feels like so that they don't pass out when they launch into space, because that wouldn't be good. They need to kind of know their surroundings and be able to push the right buttons if something went wrong, right? And yeah, so I've had lots of adventures. I'd be happy to talk about more. I jumped out of a plane once to understand how a parachute works on bringing a payload to a planet. I've been scuba diving to 50 feet under the water to see a habitat where astronauts stayed and lived for weeks at a time to understand what it was like to live in isolation in an extreme environment. Just so many different things. But with that, that's been about 15 minutes for me. So now I'm happy to take any questions you might have about space exploration. One of the fun things that I like to tell people is that in the future, we're going to have people who aren't astronauts that go into space. being an astronaut is really, really tough. There's only been like 500 some people that have ever been to space in the history of time. And, you know, it's really, really difficult to be an astronaut. But now we have companies like Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, that are creating private rides to space where you can buy a ticket into space. And people like Justin Bieber and Katy Perry and Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt and all of these famous rich people have bought tickets to go into space. And you can do this too if you wanted for the low, low price of $250,000. So it's not cheap yet. It's certainly very, very expensive, but it's on the horizon, and it's something that would be really, really fun to do. I think I would like to do that in the future. But yeah, how do you want this to work, Ava? Do you want me to look through the questions in the chat, or do you want to pick some to ask?
We can pick some.
Okay, great.
Bodie asked, how old do you have to be to go on the Vomit Comet? And also, have you ever been to space? If not, do you hope to soon?
Those are great questions. I think you only have to be like 10 maybe to fly on the Vomit Comet. I think you can be a kid for sure. I don't know how young it is. You should check, but I am pretty sure that you can be like 10 years old if you want to fly on the Vomit Comet, but you should check that. I'm not totally sure, but I know you don't have to be 18 because I looked into this at one point. And let's see, what was the other question? Oh, have I been to space? No, not yet. I would love to go to space. There's not been that many people who have ever gone to space, but I think it would be really, really fun to go. So one day I would like to go.
What's bringing?
Where can we view it? So the show Exploration Outer Space, you can find that on Fox on Saturday mornings, or you could actually watch all of the seasons on Amazon Prime. So that's on Amazon Prime. And then my new Netflix series called Emily's Wonderlab is where I get to do lots of science experiments. So you get to see me make oobleck. We make a pool of slime. Like, have you ever imagined jumping into a pool of slime? We see things explode and we get messy and make things that are glow in the dark, and it's so, so much fun. And that show comes out in August. So keep an eye out for Emily's Wonderlab on Netflix. I think that you guys really like that.
What's brought your interest in the shows you have taken part in?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think for me, I just find telling people about science and space really, really fun. I think I am obsessed with all things science and space, and I love sharing that excitement with others, especially kids. And so anytime I get to do that, I have a good day. I think it's so, so much fun. And for my show, Exploration Outer Space, as someone who studied space stuff for like 10 years, now I get to go out and talk to the smartest people in the field and ask them any question I want. Like, that is a dream job for me. It is so much fun. And to be able to share that with all of you, it's a dream come true.
I come with you?
Yes, you should be my assistant. I think that, you know, I've been the host for like 7 years now. I think they're going to need a new one soon, and I think you'd be a really good host.
What have been some of your favorite experiences as a TV show host?
Ooh, yeah, I think going to Russia was really, really fun. Being able to fly in the Vomit Comet, being able to ride in the human centrifuge. I got to try on a spacesuit that had actually been to space. I've done so many different things. That scuba diving experience was really fun. I've got to meet like a dozen astronauts through my show and talk to them about their experiences in space. I've been able to test out astronaut food. So they have space chefs at NASA that specially design different foods to take into space because your taste buds work differently in outer space. You don't taste as many like spices as we do here on the ground. You actually need more spices when you send things into space so that we can taste them. And things need to be like dehydrated, meaning you take the water out so that it's smaller and easier to launch. And they have to add the water up in space. And I was able to get some of that dehydrated food and add the water and taste it here on Earth, which was really fun. And I've just been able to do so many fun things: skydiving and scuba diving and flying in aerobatic planes and doing loops. And I went to Disney World with an astronaut once, and we rode all the roller coasters that we could find. And he told me how riding a roller coaster here on Earth feels similar to the G forces that you feel when you're launching into space. And so one of the times we were at Harry Potter World, and we were there before the park opened, and it was like really, really dark. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and we had the park all to ourselves. And it was just so much fun because I love Harry Potter and I love Disney. And so it was so cool to go to these parks and ride all the roller coasters we wanted with an astronaut who told me how it was like to fly in space. So that was pretty cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Courtney, are there any other interesting questions?
Yes. Hi, Emily. Another question from Penelope is, what has been your favorite part of writing the Ava Lace series, and what inspired you to write the series for young girls that focus on science?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I would say that this book is for boys and girls, just similar to like how Harry Potter has a main character that's a boy, but Harry Potter is for both girls and boys, right? This one, even though it has a female character, is both for boys and girls. And I wanted to write it because when I was a kid, I didn't have a ton of books that featured girls as the main character that were really sciencey and techy and adventure-y. I mostly read books that had little boys as the main character. So I wanted to create an equally awesome book that had science and technology in it, but featured a girl as the main character. And I think the most fun thing about this was writing the science part of it, because so much of this book is about a mystery and storytelling and lots of other stuff that doesn't involve science. But for me, I really enjoyed doing the science part. And each book in the back, it has something called Behind the Science section. And I go into more detail about each technology that we mention in the book, so that if you're interested, you can learn more about what a smart house is, or what ham radio is, or a radio repeater, or Earth observing satellites, or contacting aliens. I talk about aliens in the book. It's just so much fun, and I loved doing all the research to be able to talk about the science in there.
That's awesome. Someone else asked, what is it like working with Bill Nye? It seems super cool.
It is super cool. I think Bill Nye is someone that I've admired for a very long time, because he is someone who is really creative. He's really good at storytelling, and he's really good at entertaining and being a comedian, but he's also really good with science and very smart and knows his stuff. And I love people who are both creative and good at science and technology. Because sometimes I think when we're going into things like STEM, like math and science and engineering, you think that, oh, that's not creative. Like you're only good at science and technology. But that's not true. You can create wonderful, cool, exciting, funny, entertaining things when you combine your love of science and technology with your creative side. If you're funny, or if you like writing, or if you're artistic, you can combine all of your talents to create something really unique that nobody's created before. And I see Bill Nye do that a lot. And so it's been really fun to see that firsthand.
That's awesome, Emily. Another question from Denise says, what activities and classes in middle school or high school helped you prepare for aerospace engineering in college?
Oh, yeah. I think that I studied really hard at math. I think being able to be good at math helped me a whole lot. You don't have to be good at math. You don't have to love math to do it. but there is a lot of math and engineering. And so eventually you're going to want to spend some time to make sure you have that under your belt. And so taking math classes was really helpful for me. I also did FIRST Robotics. It's like a robotics team in high school. I think they also have Lego robotics for middle school. And that was really fun and helpful. And so things like that are really useful if you can do any type of extracurricular activity, like a robotics class or math league, or any of those science fairs that you can do. Those are all really great because that's going to help you figure out how to do that stuff when you're older.
Barbara asked a question. And she said, what is a good education path? I am 7 and I'm African American and attend Chinese school because I want to be an astronaut. My school's Common Core teaches how to learn to use a calculator, but not how to do math. Are there online tools for math, science, and physics?
Well, you know what? I would say my best resource for learning stuff like math and science is on YouTube. I think there are some really, really good YouTubers that are like Minute Physics is a really good YouTube. The Physics Girl. I have some stuff on my channel, the Space Gal, and Simone Yurts is really good. There's a number file is a really good math one. And some of these are a little bit older, but I think if you start to watch them when you're younger, you're going to be really advanced in math. And so I think that things like the Physics Girl and my channel are for students, younger students like you guys. I think that would be a good place to start. And then as you get older, you can check out other channels like Vsauce and Derek Muller's channel. And there's just a bunch of YouTube ones that I would recommend because I think they combine, remember how we talked about combining creativity with math and science? They make learning more fun. Khan Academy, Khan Academy, also has a lot of really good videos on stuff that I think fits with Common Core guidelines too. So that could be helpful, like really practical for you.
Also, they asked where stars come from.
Where do what come from?
Stars.
Ooh, oh my goodness, that's a very big question. So where do stars come from? It's like we have all of this stuff in the universe, and stars are like these nuclear engines that are fusing elements all the time. And so a lot of the elements that you see around us, like the iron in our blood, they're fused in stars, which is so cool to think about because it takes a lot of energy to fuse these things. And so because it burns all of this energy, it burns really, really bright. And what you're seeing in the sky are these like nuclear engines that are creating a lot of the elements that we see around us. So next time when you just kind of like look at your bodies, know that you're made of star stuff. When people say that, it means that you're made of stuff that was first formed in the center of stars that you see. So there's a lot going on there.
I think stars are made of carbon, like what we're made of.
It's like hydrogen and helium and iron, and there's a number of things that are in stars for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question, and it says, what is the best part about engineering?
I think engineering, the best part of it is being able to solve problems. I think one of the more interesting problems that I worked on was I was part of a group called Engineers Without Borders. And Engineers Without Borders is a group of engineers that looks for problems around the world and tries to solve them using stuff they learned in the classroom. And so we traveled to Mexico to solve a problem where this community in Mexico didn't have access to fresh fruit, fresh produce, fresh vegetables, right? It was a food desert. And to help fix that, we learned how to build a greenhouse for them. And so we traveled to Mexico and worked with the local community and local families to figure out what solution that they would want. And they decided that they wanted a greenhouse. So we were like, okay, we'll learn how to build you a greenhouse. So we raised the money and we went over there and we did all the labor and we helped that community build a greenhouse, knowing how to build things from our mechanical engineering classes, which was really fun. And I think there's a lot of stuff in engineering like that, where there's a problem out in the world and people aren't always sure how to solve it. And one way we can solve that is with technology and engineering. And you can use the stuff that you're learning in a classroom to help make people's lives better.
That's awesome, Emily. We have just a couple of more questions as we round out our time, but a couple more. One from Gabriella says, are there any engineering Zoom programs or online programs to do in the summer?
You know, I wish I had a better answer for that. I don't really know. I'm not super familiar with those.
Yeah. And Jackson asked, will you be in any other upcoming shows?
Not that I know of at the moment. Right now, it's just the Exploration Outer Space, which is on Amazon Prime, and then Emily's Wonderlab, which hasn't come out yet. And nobody knows about this one yet. We're just going to announce it soon. So you guys are one of the first people to hear about this, but it's coming out in August, Emily's Wonderlab. So don't forget to check that one out.
That's exciting. Is there anything else you want to just share with everyone? Maybe what would you tell your younger self as you just kind of end our time with you this afternoon?
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize, for me, this is not the type of career that I thought that I would do. When I was in school, I didn't consider myself one of the smart kids. I went to a school in a college town, and the smart kids, quote unquote smart kids at my school, were the ones who had parents who were the professors at the local university. And I didn't know anyone in my family that pursued STEM. I didn't have any family who had PhDs or anything. Most of my family didn't go to college. Many of them didn't go to finish high school. And so for me, I was like, oh no, I'm just not the type of person to do this kind of stuff. But what changed and what I learned is that you can make yourself smarter. I was sort of a slower learner, but I realized that if I spend the time and learn something, then it doesn't matter if I'm a slow learner or not. I've now learned that thing. And so who cares if it took me a little while longer to learn it? I just need to spend more time doing that. And I learned that you can make yourself smarter. The whole idea of being a smart person doesn't exist. Being smart isn't genetic. You can work really, really hard and make yourself a little bit smarter day by day. So I would just encourage you all to work hard and spend the time doing it, and do things like this. Like you're doing the right thing right now. You're spending the time to listen to other people and figure out what you want to do with your career. So I encourage you guys to work hard and chase after your dreams.
Emily, thank you. We are so thankful for your story, thankful for what you're doing in the world and the impact that you're leaving. And so very, very thankful for your story. And thank you for your time today. Ava, do you have any closing remarks?
No, but thank you so much, Courtney and Emily. I hope you enjoyed this BrainCandy Lab session. We had from engineer to science TV host, how I became the space gal, with our special guest, Emily Calendrelli. We love your feedback, so please go to the chat and see our survey link. We have sessions starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with our special guests Lauren Sachs and Jade Tan Holmes. We'd like to thank Witty and our sponsors, Ring Central, Blank Page, and Geico, and our speaker, Emily. Until next time, this is Ava Astro for BrainCandy Labs, reminding you to stay curious and don't forget to ask the next best question. Follow BrainCandy Labs, BrainCandyLabs.com, and Ava Astro on YouTube, and Ava Astro on Instagram, BrainCandy Labs on Instagram as well. Bye.
Thanks, Emily.